are my favorite ways to be petty with a workplace bully at work? I'll tell you the pettiest thing I've ever done, which I just shared publicly for the first time in my workplace bullying course, module 2, about documenting. I was inspired to do this because I was joined by my special guest, Haisa Silva, who has done the pettiest thing ever. I think she wins the trophy for this one, of creating a literal board game on how to outsmart your toxic boss. Because what is pettier than making a game out of their game and laughing at them? Talk about reclaiming power. The pettiest thing I've ever done is that I was in a workplace where on the first day one of the managers quit, and me and another employee who'd been there a longer time were picking up some of the slack while she was gone, which y'all should never do. But I didn't know, I was very young. And they loved the work I was doing, and I was very qualified for the position. I was just still in grad school, so that's why I was looking for like a lower level job. But I needed the money, and they were like, we would love to have you be the manager. Just let's get the paperwork going, etc. They put all of the work on me. I was knocking it out of the park, and they told me. And it wasn't just that they told me, they told all of my coworkers to treat me as the manager. And the clients, like everybody knew. And then they had the job posting, which they told me was just a formality. They had to do this, and just for legal reasons. And they had me interview for the job, and I did come prepared. I wasn't just like I got it in the bag. Like I did come prepared. I talked about all the things I had done for them, and then there was radio silence after I interviewed. I was on a contract where I needed a renewal for my other job that I was already doing. So after 2 weeks, I went into their office and I was like, hey, so are we even going to renew the current contract that I have? I haven't heard anything. The director who I asked that, he got up and went to the assistant director's office in front of everyone, and he was like, oh, she's asking about the job, and he was all uncomfortable. And keep in mind, this man was above the assistant director. He was just making her do the dirty work. Like, he knew, and he made me share an office with him. So he could have just told me. But no. So they had me, walk in front of all my coworkers to her office, which the rest of the office was an open floor, so they could all hear what was going on in the office, and tell me with the door open so everyone could hear why I didn't get the job. They offered it to someone else, but that person hadn't formally accepted. So they hadn't told me because I was their second choice. And so they were basically just stringing me along because they didn't want to piss me off to stop doing the work, and they didn't want me to not take it if she didn't accept it. They just wanted to pretend that they offered it to me like they already had. And I'm a pretty feisty girl, but after 2 weeks of silence, I knew something was up. And so I just said, okay, well, are you still going to renew my current contract? Because, girl's got to pay her bills. And they were like, yes, we definitely want to keep you, as an assistant to this person who will be coming in. And so I was like, okay, thank you. Well, let me know about that paperwork. And so I just went out, and all my coworkers are in the open office, and I just went to my desk. And of course, my phone is blowing up because they've all read it. They all heard it. And they were on my side, but it was still humiliating. And so I had already applied for, that was when I got my first government job, or right before I got my first government job, because I've been applying to work in the federal government. For those applications take months. So I had applied months earlier, and I knew that I had some interviews scheduled, and I had already interviewed some, and I had told them that in my job interview and I had told them, they had asked me something in the interview, are you looking at other offers? And it was kind of haha. And I was like, well, I have had other interviews, but this would take a priority because I'm already here, and I like being here and would like to continue the work I'm doing. I could tell they didn't believe me. They gave each other a side look. And that is something I've never said in an interview that I had another offer that I didn't have. And I have never had an interviewer take me seriously when I said that. They have always been shocked when I've had a counter offer. Anyway, thankfully, a few weeks after the public humiliation at work, which is a bullying tactic, I did get an offer from Washington, D.C. To go work to the government at what had been my dream agency to work for. And I was so excited to move to D.C. If you've ever worked for the federal government, you know that it can take forever for everything to be really finalized, because even though you have an offer, you have to go through all the security in the background and everything. And I don't tell people till things are final. And so the whole months leading up to letting them know that I was leaving, I just did my job. I didn't do the training manager job. I didn't do any of that. And the woman they offered the job to, she never got back with them, ever. And I've made another video a while ago, a year ago, on a conversation that I had with the director, because he kept putting shit on my plate. That was like, he would leave Post-it notes on my desk of all the training manager tasks that need to be done, and I started picking them up and putting them back on his side of the desk. And I was sassy like that because I knew I had a backup. I knew I had an option. I've made other videos about how the conversation I had with him, that I managed to not lose my cool and why I did that. But ultimately, I had like a 4-month contract that it was time to be renewed again. So we had come back to that part where we were last time, where they publicly humiliated me. And they were like, Anna, you're the only one who hasn't signed your contract yet. And I knew that they needed it that day. So that morning, I had dressed in the same outfit that I had been wearing when they humiliated me, down to the same lipstick. And I did the exact same thing that they did to me. I set the scene again. I said, oh, let's talk in your office. And I went from the director's office to the assistant director's office. I left the door open and I told them, I have to let you know, I have accepted another offer in Washington, D.C. The only reason I hadn't told you was because if things didn't work out, you were my second choice. They were floored. And they didn't even really try to hide they were floored. Like, of course they did once they collected themselves, but that was the first time in my career, even though it was still pretty early, that was the first time that I ever even got an apology. Because the director literally said to me, like, he got really quiet, and the assistant director was like, you're really quiet. And he was like, we underestimated you. We underestimated you. Like, he said word for word, you told us you had options, and we did not take that seriously. And that's when it started to click for me. This was before I did my unwritten rules research. That's when it started to click for me that these people demand you to be petty. If I had lost my shit, they would have just written me off as like a crazy redneck emotional woman. That I played their game back to them because they knew what they were doing when they publicly humiliated me. They orchestrated that. So to see it played back to them, even without the same power, right? Because I was still their employee, to see they knew what I was doing because they made those choices. And so for me to do that again, where I didn't have to verbally say, does this sound familiar? They knew. And that's unfortunately why, like, I would love to be direct and treat people like it. And I still find ways to like give people a chance to be like, hey, you seem upset. Let's have a talk. Or like, hey, I noticed you've been excluding me from meetings. Is there something we can talk about? Because I want to make sure we're able to work together. Don't go from 0 to 100. But when they go to 100, we go to 125.